Chosen ones. They are absolutely furious with this person right now. I'm talking about an anger so explosive, it's tearing their entire tribe apart from the inside out. They're collapsing because of you. Screams, charges flying, ties ending in spectacular fashion. The situation went far too far, and now they're paying the penalty. This is intense, heavier than any of them could have imagined when they first dared to target a chosen one. It all began months ago when they spotted something in you that made them deeply restless. Maybe it was your natural presence, your power to discern through falsehood, or simply the way blessings seemed to flow toward you with ease. Whatever ignited their jealousy, they decided you needed to be cut down. They shaped their small faction, thinking that numbers would give them the edge over one soul. But here's where their scheme began to shatter from the very outset. If this message already speaks to your soul, subscribe, like this video, and comment 77 below. Stay with me, because the unraveling that's happening right now is not just gossip or rumor, it is prophecy being fulfilled in real time. Number 1, the whispered plot. From the very beginning, they operated in half-light, crafting secret alliances in shadows, hoping you would never notice the net closing around you. Their conversations were filled with doubts sown carefully into your path, their whispers framed to make you stumble in your own reflection. They mistook your silence for weakness, not realizing it was heaven's way of recording every word in the cosmic ledger. Isaiah 29 verse 15 warns of those who go to great depths to hide their plans from the Lord. But even their depth was shallow compared to the eye of eternity. Their unity was never forged in truth, but in fear, and fear cannot sustain itself without feeding on illusion. What they called strength in numbers was nothing more than desperation dressed as strategy. Comment, I seal this word in light if you know their whispered plots could never survive the presence of your truth. Stay with me, because what happens when authenticity meets deception is the beginning of exposure. There are moments in life when a faint echo brushes your spirit, a whisper that seems too intentional to be coincidence. It feels like walking into a room and sensing a conversation ended just before you arrived, leaving an invisible residue in the air. The dream you had last night suddenly aligns with something unfolding today, and your inner voice insists that none of this is random. This is the ancient way awareness awakens, not in thunder or spectacle, but in subtle, haunting reminders that your life has always been more than surface. It is as if an unseen scribe has been tracking every step, waiting for the hour when the record would be unveiled to you. The strangeness you've carried, the tension in your gut, the weight of silence in crowded places, all of it begins to arrange itself into meaning. And what once felt like paranoia now feels like confirmation. Something was always moving behind the veil. You remember the quiet seasons where you felt out of place, misunderstood, or painfully exposed without knowing why. There were days you walked into rooms and felt tension rise, even though no one spoke against you directly. You noticed how laughter sometimes shifted when you entered, or how conversation slowed into a silence that felt staged. The longing to belong collided with an inner sense that you were marked by difference, and it cut like a blade you couldn't name. They told you it was in your head, that you were too sensitive, too watchful, too heavy for ordinary spaces. But deep inside, you knew it wasn't imagination, it was resistance stirred not by who you pretended to be, but by what your spirit carried. And though the ache was sharp, it was also a signal. You were never meant to blend, because what is chosen cannot dissolve into the crowd. Slowly, the reframe begins. Those isolated moments were not punishment, but preparation. Every rejection became a kind of map, steering you away from places that could not hold your truth. Every misfit experience was a hidden signal that your alignment was elsewhere, with a pattern too sacred for you to see yet. Isaiah 29 verse 15 declares, "Woe to those who go to great depths to hide their plans from the Lord." And those depths included the pits dug beneath your feet. Yet heaven's watchful gaze was on every plot, every whispered conversation, every trap that was set in shadows. Their alliances were fragile constructions built not on love, but on fear, and fear has no root that can endure the weight of truth. What once felt like your curse now begins to reveal itself as proof of your calling. Look closer at the signs you may have overlooked, the déjà vu moments that kept repeating, the names that showed up in dreams, the repeated numbers that seemed to stalk you in silence. Each one felt like a puzzle piece out of place, but together they were assembling a picture too vast to deny. That friend who betrayed you without clear reason, the job opportunity that vanished at the last minute, the relationship that collapsed just as it felt secure. All of them were movements in a hidden choreography. Your soul knew before your mind could process it. These were not accidents, but markers of an awakening. Like whispers drifting through corridors of time, they were signals guiding you into remembrance. The restlessness you carried was not chaos, but the first ripple of divine order breaking through illusion. And what you thought was emptiness was actually the space where truth would finally emerge. The more you reflect, the more you recognize that your intuition has always been a faithful witness. Every time you felt a strange heaviness in someone's presence, you were discerning energy that others ignored. Every sudden chill, every flash of unease, every whisper of something's not right was heaven's way of shielding you before your eyes could see. You did not imagine the darkness behind their smiles. You simply perceived what they worked so hard to disguise. Like a compass that never lied, your spirit pointed you toward hidden realities you couldn't yet articulate. Their plots might have been concealed in whispers, but your silence carried more truth than their words ever could. And what you mistook as weakness was your greatest strength, the ability to see what was never spoken. This is where awareness deepens, realizing that awakening is not about becoming something new, but remembering what was buried. You are not simply reacting to life. You are decoding it, uncovering the architecture that has always held your story, the hidden hand shaping your delays, the divine ledger recording their words, the archetypal memory whispering through your dreams. All of it has been leading you here. You have carried within you a memory older than this lifetime, one that refused to be extinguished by betrayal or silence. The patterns of your life are no longer random, but revelations carved in shadow, waiting for the light of recognition. Like the sealed scroll mentioned in Revelation, what was closed to you is now being unsealed. And each line that opens carries a truth about who you were always destined to be. Now comes the first activation, the gentle but undeniable empowerment of recognizing your difference as design, not defect. That sensitivity you resented is your discernment awakening. That longing for meaning is the hunger of your spirit for what the world cannot supply. That inner wisdom, which seemed too heavy for your years, is the residue of a soul that has walked ancient paths before. You begin to reclaim the dignity of your own knowing, no longer bending under the weight of their whispers. Your silence becomes your shield, your endurance becomes your proof, and your presence becomes the mirror that bends their schemes back on themselves. What they intended as sabotage has turned into testimony of your resilience. And what once made you question your worth now becomes the very crown upon your head. Chosen one, hear this. Your arrival to this moment was not coincidence. You were not meant to drown in their shadows, but to outlast them until the light revealed what they feared. Every whispered scheme, every hidden alliance, every subtle trap was already accounted for in the architecture of your destiny. Their unity has fractured, their silence has testified, and your endurance has carried you into recognition. You are not here by accident. You are here because heaven has marked this as the hour of exposure. Comment, I carry the silence as crown. If you know this word belongs to you, if you have felt the weight of shadows collapsing into light, because what begins here is only the initiation, the mirror is about to turn, and when it does, the collapse of illusions will shake everything they thought could hold you. What we do here every day is possible because of the few who choose to be keepers of this light. I thank them now, one by one, in the silence of my heart. If you want to be part of this circle and receive what cannot be spoken in public, join. The portal is below. Number 2, the mirror of authenticity. Chosen one, what unsettled them most was not your words, but your presence. Like a mirror placed before their souls, you reflected what they could not hide, and in that reflection, their masks began to fracture. You never set out to expose anyone, but authenticity does not negotiate with performance. Lamentations 3 verse 58 declares, "You, Lord, took up my case, you redeemed my life," and that redemption echoed every time you simply stood in truth. Your very peace became a threat, because it dismantled the stage they built with lies. Their panic was not about you speaking against them. It was about you existing in a way that revealed them to themselves. Comment, "I walk crowned by eternal flame," if you've seen how your authenticity unsettled those who built lives on illusion. And stay with me, because when masks break, facades always follow. It begins with a subtle unease, the kind that cannot be explained by logic but lingers in your body like a quiet heaviness. You walked into spaces where nothing seemed wrong on the surface, yet a hidden current pressed against your spirit. Conversations sounded normal, but your heart sensed a dissonance, like music played just out of tune. Eyes shifted when you spoke, and laughter bent slightly under the weight of unspoken truths. At first, you thought it was imagination, that maybe you were overanalyzing small details others would never notice, but what you were truly sensing was the vibration of masks slipping, a performance fraying at its edges. The unease was your spirit's way of telling you, there is more beneath the surface than they want you to see. The emotional pressure of this realization was heavy because it made you feel like a stranger, even among familiar faces. You knew what rejection tasted like, not always in words, but in the subtle withdrawal of energy when you showed up as yourself. You felt the sting of being too much, of carrying truths others were unwilling to face. Shame tried to root itself in your chest, convincing you that their discomfort meant something was wrong with you. Cycles of doubt rose and fell, whispering that if you could just shrink a little, maybe you would be accepted. Yet every time you attempted to dim your presence, the world around you felt emptier, like you were betraying something sacred within yourself. That is the paradox of being chosen. The very qualities they resist are the ones you were sent here to embody. As the pressure grew, you began to realize it was never random. Resistance has architecture built from fear, jealousy, and the fragile scaffolding of lies. It is the same pattern seen throughout Scripture. Joseph cast into the pit because his dreams revealed too much. Moses exiled into the wilderness before leading people to freedom. Jesus opposed not for sin, but for authenticity. The wilderness was never absence. It was training, a sacred battlefield disguised as exile. What you felt pressing against you was not personal, it was systemic, the reflex of falsehood recoiling against truth. Their unity was not love, but fear banding together to contain what it could not comprehend. And yet, every layer of resistance became evidence of how much light you carried. Looking back, patterns begin to reveal themselves like constellations forming out of scattered stars. You notice how obstacles were never isolated. They came in recurring waves, timed to strike whenever you were about to grow. The betrayals looked different on the surface, but underneath they carried the same root, an attempt to fracture your trust in yourself. The draining environments were not accidents, they were spiritual tests designed to sharpen your discernment. Each repetition was the universe asking, will you see through this now? What once felt like random chaos becomes a mirror showing you how every trap had the same design, and in that recognition, clarity begins to dawn. You were never confused, only trained. The more the veil lifts, the clearer the resistance becomes. It is not just people, it is atmosphere, subtle interference, the weight of energy trying to slow your stride. You felt it in the fog of confusion that came over you after being around certain individuals. You noticed the heaviness in rooms where silence seemed to carry a hidden hostility. Doors that should have opened easily slammed shut, while whispers of sabotage echoed in the background. Yet even in the midst of these forces, your presence disturbed the distortion more than it disturbed you. Light has no need to fight the dark. It only needs to exist for shadows to unravel. And that is why they feared you most when you were simply still. Your reactions to these pressures were varied because you were human before you recognized you were chosen. There were times you shut down, retreating into silence not out of wisdom, but out of fear. There were moments you tried to please, bending yourself into smaller shapes in hopes the hostility would fade. Other times, rebellion rose quietly in you, not loud or destructive, but a silent refusal to surrender your core. Each response carried its own lesson, shaping your endurance and teaching you how to move without apology. The temptation to quit was real, but so was the quiet fire inside you that refused to die, and every falter you survived became part of the crown you now carry. This is where reclamation begins, because you see now that resistance was confirmation, not condemnation. They opposed you because they saw what you carried, even when you did not. Their attempts to silence, you became the drumbeat that taught your voice its strength. Their rejection became the furnace that refined your discernment into authority. What once made you doubt is now what makes you dangerous to every lie, because you know firsthand what truth costs. Your presence has always been enough, not because of what you said, but because of what you embodied. And the time has come to reclaim the power they tried to convince you never had. Chosen one, let this truth settle in your spirit. You were never resisted because you were weak. You were resisted because you were powerful. The clearer your presence became, the more their masks began to fracture. Every plot they set against you became evidence of the fire within you they could not extinguish. What unsettled them most was not your words, but your authenticity, a mirror they could not escape. Comment, I move guarded by divine fire. If you know this word belongs to you, if you felt how opposition was proof of your assignment. Because what breaks in the mirror is only the beginning. The facade is about to crumble, and when it does, their own words will undo them. And stay with me, because the collapse of illusions is the next revelation waiting to rise. Every word, every image you receive here is an offering. If you feel this word has touched you today, you can honor it with a sign right here below with a donation through the Super Thanks button. It is a small gesture, but it opens great doors. Number 3, the crumbling facade. It always begins quietly, like cracks spiderwebbing across glass, until the whole surface shatters at once. Their lies were never foundations. They were temporary scaffolds, held up by fear and secrecy, and divine timing has now called them into collapse. Psalm 64 verse 8 proclaims, their own tongues will ruin them, and all who see them will shake their heads. And you are watching that unfold in front of you. The very words they use to harm, you are becoming the evidence that undoes them. Their accusations unraveling into self-betrayal. It is no longer your struggle to defend yourself. It is their struggle to explain themselves to the silence they created. Their collapse is not punishment. It is exposure, the natural return of truth into spaces that cannot contain deceit. Comment, I rise marked by the divine. If you've witnessed lies crumble in your presence, and share the moment you knew truth was stronger than their manipulations. Because what falls in collapse prepares the throne for vindication. It begins with a moment so subtle that only later do you realize its significance. A word slips, a mask falters, an expression lingers too long before it hides itself again. What once confused you now returns like a memory stitched with divine precision, and the dissonance suddenly makes sense. You begin to see the threads of deception not as random accidents, but as cracks spreading across the surface of their carefully painted mask. The whispers that used to destabilize you now sound hollow, unable to carry the weight of their own illusion. And in that instant, you recognize that what you feared was never as strong as the truth rising inside you. The shift is not loud, but it is irreversible. Perception has changed, and with it the balance of power. As this awareness deepens, symbols and codes begin to emerge in the silence around you. Numbers appear at the edges of your days, Dreams replay with sharper meaning, and repeated words take on the weight of hidden scrolls. Patterns that once seemed disconnected now reveal themselves as a form of divine geometry, a language of the unseen speaking into your timeline. Their schemes, once cloaked, now glow with exposure under the light of alignment. Every secret text, every collusion, every false smile becomes part of a larger script that heaven has been recording all along. What they thought was hidden was never truly hidden, for nothing escapes the gaze of eternity. And now, through your awakening, you begin to read reality as scripture written in code, every line confirming that you were never walking blind. Inside, something begins to sharpen with force that cannot be denied. Your intuition, once dismissed as overthinking, now feels like a weapon of clarity honed by fire. You sense the energy shifts in rooms before words are even spoken. Boundaries that were once porous begin to rise like walls of light, guarding your essence against contamination. Your body speaks louder too. The tightness in your chest, the chills down your spine, the sense of heaviness when deception enters a space. These are not coincidences, but confirmations that your spirit has always known what your mind only now begins to articulate. And in that knowledge, you feel less like a victim of confusion and more like a guardian of discernment. What stirs within inevitably begins to echo without. The world around you rearranges itself in response to your alignment, as though unseen hands are redrawing the stage. People reveal themselves suddenly. Some draw closer in reverence, others retreat in discomfort. Opportunities appear that seem impossibly timed, while obstacles rise that test the integrity of your newfound vision. Relationships fracture, masks crumble, alliances collapse. Not because you sought exposure, but because authenticity itself destabilizes falsehood. What was within you is now mirrored outside of you, like a blueprint of divine architecture unfolding before your eyes. You realize the alignment was never just internal. It was the world catching up to the truth you had always carried. And in that reflection, your authority begins to take form. Then in quiet but undeniable waves, memory begins to stir. You dream of faces you cannot name, of scrolls sealed and opened, of places that feel familiar though you have never walked them. An ancient language begins to hum inside your bones, reminding you that this revelation is not a new arrival, but a remembrance. The sense of "I have been here before" intensifies, not as confusion, but as activation. What you thought were delays and detours reveal themselves as timing devices, sacred pauses that ensured you would awaken in this exact moment. The intelligence you feel is not learned but remembered, as if a dormant script inside your soul has begun to read itself aloud. And in that remembrance, your spirit whispers, "You were always more than they said you were." From this memory comes the vision of destiny that is no longer distant but present. You understand now that the future is not being created, it is being reclaimed. Every step ahead feels like retracing a path you once knew but had forgotten. You stop asking for permission to exist because your existence itself was the prophecy. What others called arrogance was always simply the weight of your calling pressing against their limitations. You begin to walk not as one seeking approval, but as one retrieving what was promised. And with each step, you feel the echo of prophecy aligning with your breath, like the earth itself remembering your name. And now, reclamation begins in its fiercest form. The resistance you once thought was rejection reveals itself as confirmation of your divine signature. You no longer apologize for being too much, for your very essence unsettles the illusions they built their lives upon. Their sabotage becomes irrelevant because what was meant to destroy you became your initiation into authority. You begin to reclaim your voice, your power, your vision, not as new possessions, but as treasures that were always yours. Every scar becomes a seal of authenticity. Every silence becomes a crown forged in endurance. You no longer stand in defense of yourself, but in declaration of the truth you embody. And in that reclamation, the facade finally collapses into dust. Chosen one, Let this revelation settle deeply. The exposure was never meant to break you. It was meant to unveil you. What they tried to bury has become the very seed of your authority, now breaking the soil with unstoppable force. Their collapse is not your victory alone. It is the universe proving that truth cannot be silenced. Comment, "I walk hidden yet never lost," if you know this word belongs to you, and share the dream, the sign, or the memory that confirmed your awakening. Let your story strengthen others who are walking the same path of remembrance. Because this collapse is not the end, but the threshold into coronation. And stay with me, because beyond the fall of illusions comes the inheritance of authority. Number 4, the crown of vindication. Exposure is never the end. It is the beginning of coronation. Zechariah 10 verse 12 declares, "I will strengthen them in the Lord, and in his name they will live securely." The weight you carried has become your crown. The endurance you gained has become your authority. You no longer walk as the one accused, but as the one preserved, your discernment sharpened by the very fire they try to burn you with. They feared your silence, they feared your fire, and now they will fear the crown that proves you survived it all. What they used against you has been turned into your inheritance. Clarity, resilience, and authority that no hand can strip away. Comment, "I anchor this truth in my soul." If you know your survival is your coronation, and share the moment you realized endurance was power. Because what crowns you in silence will reveal you in power, and that unveiling is only beginning. The first sound is not of triumph, but of a whisper rising through memory like incense through a temple. It is as if a voice older than time speaks into your spirit, reminding you of vows you once made under a sky filled with eternal fire. That whisper carries no new knowledge, only the remembrance of what was always yours, waiting for this hour of unveiling. You feel it not as noise, but as vibration, a sacred hum that settles deep into your bones. In that moment, the years of silence take on shape, and the weight you thought was a curse is revealed as preparation. The whisper does not tell you what to become. It tells you who you have always been. And as it settles, you realize the crown was forming all along, hidden beneath the heaviness you carried. There is a name you have never spoken, yet it has been circling your life since before your birth. This name is not printed on documents nor whispered in ordinary conversations. It is inscribed in the marrow of your being. Like the sealed scroll John beheld, it was locked away until the appointed time, waiting for your endurance to break the seal. You may not know its syllables, but you feel its resonance every time the world told you you don't belong. That ache of otherness was not rejection, but evidence that you carried a lineage the world could not comprehend. You were the hidden remnant, the child of remembrance, the one preserved through exile until prophecy demanded your unveiling. And today, that name rises again, not on lips, but in spirit as authority begins to cloak you. The mark has always been there, though unseen by most. It was not ink nor scar, nor ornament, but a spiritual signature that carried itself into every room you entered. Others sensed it and trembled, though they could not explain why their eyes shifted or their words stumbled in your presence. It was the invisible cloak of discernment, the resonance that only the awakened could perceive. You did not need to declare your identity, because your energy spoke it in silence louder than voices could. Even when you doubted yourself, the mark never left you, for it was written into the architecture of your being. And now, as the veil of confusion lifts, you see that the cloak they mocked was the very garment of royalty waiting to be revealed. Chosen one, remember, every shadow they built was only preparation for your light. Their deception has crumbled, their unity has dissolved, but your path has only expanded. Subscribe if you haven't yet, like this video, and comment, "I am chosen to let this message anchor in your soul." Please share it with someone who needs to hear this. And to all supporting members, thank you. Your devotion fuels this mission daily. For full prophetic revelations, join the membership via the link in the description. Your path deserves more than fragments. Step into the full light, And if this message moved you deeply, consider tapping the Super Thanks button to support the mission. Every Super Thanks fuels the light we are spreading together. You didn't just endure their collapse, you became the revelation that ended it.